Start young. Be like a sponge. Learn everything that you possibly can. Get involved. The more people marching towards making this world a better place, the better place this world's going to be. And that's not going to end when I leave this earth. It's going to go on and on and on. So what a better thing to do than leave a legacy of doing the right thing.
Don't feel like the only people that can be philanthropists are millionaires and billionaires. Everyone has something to bring to the table, and everyone's perspective. Everyone can bring value to philanthropy. And I think everyone needs to. I mean, the world requires it. We all depend on it. I mean, that it's going to be for welfare of humankind. Stay as informed as possible. Recognize that philanthropy is a business. There's a lot to it. It's more than just writing checks, and everyone can play a part.
Hi, I'm Elise Westhoff of the Philanthropy Roundtable, and this is Doers to Donors, where you'll meet inspiring innovators who are making a lasting impact through meaningful philanthropy. Today, my guests are Maureen and Kelly Hackett of the Hackett Family Foundation. As donors and community activists, their work focuses on faith, family, health, and education. Maureen and Kelly, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah.
So Maureen, let's start with you. Can we start at the beginning, and can you tell me a little bit about
100
your
years
childhood?
ago. Yeah. I grew up north of the city of Chicago in an area called Wilmette. I'm the 6th of the 9 kids. I'm the middle, affectionately referred to as the general, because I speak loud, and when you're in the middle, you have to speak loud and act like you're important and you know everything. So I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, and my mother ended up being the breadwinner. She was 40 when I was born, and there's 3 behind me, so a pioneer woman. And my father was an alcoholic my whole life. So my mother started an agency for women only to get jobs. She worked in the health and human sector in Washington when she was first out of college. So to earn a living and to pay for groceries, that's what she did. And my father never went to work, but we grew up thinking that he was working, different job title for every camp application that you put through. That's how I grew up. But my passion for philanthropy really came from the example of my mother. To quote her, she didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but she had a lot of love, a lot of wisdom. The clothes that we had, she would sell for like 10 cents to people in the neighborhood and make us feel like we were entrepreneurs, you know, selling our clothes. So she gave of the heart, and she gave a lot of the heart. So I always say she's my example of philanthropy. My father was a very loving man. He was just lost and ill. And so to understand this all these years later, I'm very passionate about mental health in general, you know, body, mind, and soul.
You know I share your passion for mental health.
I do.
You reached out to me early on in my tenure at the Roundtable to talk about that, because I shared a little of my stories. You met your husband, Jim, when you were young.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you met, and any fun stories you have around that.
We were best friends. We met when we were freshmen in high school in a very huge, we knew each other in grammar school, but an enormous class of 1,000 in our high school. At 17, I bet him $100 that we would get married. Very manipulative. I bet him $100. We married when we were 22, and there's a great picture of me at the altar whispering to him, and my mother said, I'm curious what you were saying, you know, some sweet nothings. I said, no, I was saying, and based on interest rates, I think you probably owe me about $1,200 now. So,
I love that.
Yeah. We have 4 wonderful kids, 3 beautiful grandchildren, and he's from a large family as well. So we've done a lot of philanthropy together, teamwork together, moved a gazillion times. He was in the oil and gas business, left that, went into private equity, left that, went back to get a degree in theology, a master's in theology, and he does ethical, moral leadership classes. Together we try to do ethical philanthropy. That's what we're doing.
Since you got married young, you probably faced a lot of struggles early in your young life, as many couples do.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about those early years of marriage.
Very tough times. There were a lot of times you had to pick up and move. We were moving every 2 to 3 years. 4 kids, putting them in different schools. A lot of commuting. Jim commuted in several of his positions, sometimes up to 2 years, back and forth during the week. And then, of course, then there's the other side of being the wife of a executive, a chairman and CEO of a publicly held company. And so you have that role. Not everyone took it as serious as I did, but we were always considered a team. We always said, we got the MBA. We always said, you know, we provided this for you kids. We've been blessed and we've done it together, so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, tell me your perspective on growing up in the Hackett family. What was it like? What were your mom and dad like?
Amazing. I loved my childhood. I never wanted for anything. But my mom was really the main parent who raised us. She did everything. She was a substitute teacher. She was the cook, the cleaning lady, the nurse, the nanny.
I could change a flat.
She could do everything. She could rewire her own home if needed. But you know, we also loved when Dad was home. He loved our sports and our activities, so it was great. And she never made us feel like he was, you know, out doing something he shouldn't be doing. Like she said, everything they did as a team. And that was really, I think, important for all of us to see and to know that, you know, they weren't a stereotype of a stay-at-home mom and an executive man. It was very much a team effort. Everything they did was because they were both on the same page at all times. So that was great for me to see. But they also kept us very, very grounded. I feel like I had a very normal upbringing. You know, they didn't come from much at all and built quite a lot. And it was always great to feel like my status in life didn't change as a result of socioeconomics. If anything, all I saw was a different sharing of resources. I loved my childhood. It was great to have siblings that were so close in age and to not feel like moving all around for a career path was something that really had to affect me because I had built-in friends. So,
well,
yeah.
I love the idea you called your mom the CEO of the Hackett family.
100%. She used to tell us, you know, your dad might be the CEO of his company, but I'm the CEO of this house. And so very early on, it was kind of interesting because I think that really did a lot for me in terms of my own career path. Titles didn't mean much. They always made sure that we understood that it's someone's values and who they are at their core that really matters. You can give anyone a title, but it doesn't make them good at what they do or a good person, so.
Can you each tell me about the first time that you remember being charitable yourself?
I remember clearly going to the convent where the sisters lived in the Catholic school that we went to. Scared to death that I was going to go to the convent with my mother. We were taking them pies. And so I got to see behind the scenes, the nuns without their habits. And they were nice people. And they were grateful for the pies that we were bringing. So, you know, and I did help make the pies. I was a little kid, so maybe 9 or 10, and I was just surprised that, you know, when we brought it to them, the joy that it gave them. Not the pie itself, just the act of giving. Yeah, I was little. You?
I think the same's true for me. I think, you know, we're fortunate that we have strong Catholic faith and that's such a big part of the Catholic faith as well, you know, giving back to your community. So I'm not sure I ever knew a life where I wasn't charitable.
When my kids were little, I did drag them everywhere with me where I was volunteering. At an orphanage or taking a turkey to an underprivileged family or, you know, anything. Providing a family with clothes that they no longer fit in, having them give them to that family is huge. Yeah. The party shoes, the dresses, yeah.
What's your most meaningful experience volunteering that you've ever had?
So I was expecting my 4th child. I was just moved back to Houston for the 4th time. So I taught at a home for teenage unwed mothers. They all had a baby. And I taught time management. I was so pleased to see that not only could they take care of their baby and get a job, but they were taking care of themselves. You know, I was teaching them not just time management, I was teaching them English and a budget and, you know, hygiene. Probably 5 or 6 of those ladies, those young women, I've kept in touch with, and they're young adults that are very productive at this point in their lives. Somewhat like the young women at St. Agnes whose tuition I paid, and they went on to the University of Houston, and now they're doctors and lawyers, and yeah. So moving the needle for others, for me, I think that as a volunteer, I think that was incredibly valuable to me.
I've had a lot of really cool experiences. Most impactful for me probably were the first experiences I had when it wasn't necessarily with my mom. Not because it's not impactful, but as a philanthropist, a next generation philanthropist, to realize that you can do it on your own, and that it's not just something your family does. It's not just something you're being told to do because you're the next gen and you're supposed to, but to feel like I made a decision. I chose the place I want to help. I chose how I acted when I got there, and I've chosen whether to continue to be involved. That's really impactful. So that's something I'd really like to see more of amongst next generation and at younger ages. People being given the autonomy to make those decisions on their own.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your philanthropy. So much of your charitable work has been really deeply personal for your family.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about some of the things that you're most proud of in your philanthropy and why you got interested in them.
I've told you my story about growing up and curious why Dad used the bottle as the Band-Aid. So mental health, for sure, very passionate about. And then having personal crises in our family and people that ended up with serious post-traumatic stress, hospitalization, residential care, and all that, wanting to understand that even more. I dove into mental health and started out really focused on advocacy and eliminating the stigma. So I've jumped into this, but as I say, body, mind, and soul. Started out, committee member, and then joining boards, and then trying to move the trajectory of the impact of those boards. Finally, years ago, Kelly said to me, "Mom, what do you want to do with the second half of your life?" When Jim was considering retiring, and what was I going to do? Not that that defined me, but what do you want to do next? And I talked to Jim long and hard about it, and he said, "Listen, you've been at this game for a long time, 40 plus years of trying to bring it to the table for conversation, and much more than that, as you well know." So he said, policy's it. So my family office worked on the largest gift I've ever made, lifetime gift, and established the Hackett Center for Mental Health here in Houston. And this was just after Hurricane Harvey. And I was stunned with the number of kids, not just families and individuals, but the kids, just in Harris County affected by Harvey with stress and depression and anxiety and fear and sleepless nights. It was 1.6 million just in Harris County, Houston, Harris County, and the Gulf Coast. So that's when I went, I gotta do this full time. Prior to that, I joined a group, well, this won't surprise you. So there's a policy institute here in Texas, the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, and it was started by a gentleman who was looking to put the big cities all around the state of Texas together at the table to create better policy for mental health, educating our local and state legislators, and eventually the federal government. So I joined the board, and then we became an affiliate regional center here, the Hackett Center. So that's part of my philanthropy. Education of all kind is also very important to me. My Catholic faith is very important to me. My mother survived breast and colon cancer, so cancer is also top of my list. And I've enjoyed my volunteerism, which I did as a young wife with 4 little kids at MD Anderson, and now I'm on the board. And I chair the philanthropy committee. So I'm having a blast, and I nominated my daughter here to join the board of visitors, and so she's coming with me.
Allowing the whole family
Everybody's
to share in the joy of giving, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That for me was the most impactful that we've done.
I've loved, to be honest, I think that every gift my parents have ever made has been impactful. I came on more formally in a role on the Hackett Family Foundation in 2012, but I've known for so long that they've never made gifts for the wrong reasons. They've thought through and been strategic about every single gift they've ever made, whether it's $50 or $20 million. And that is something I've always really appreciated, that nothing they've done has ever been a check cut for a tax benefit. Everything has been so thought through that their number one priority has always been whether this will impact the greatest number of lives possible. So their efforts in the mental health space, with respect to cancer, with respect to education, is always about looking outside of themselves and recognizing their own privilege, as well as that of their children and their extended family, and trying to extend that privilege to others. So whether that's through testifying before Congress on mental health parity, or looking at a new way of educating children today, I think it's really important that they recognize all the work that they've done has been impactful on every level possible. It's not just a big gift that's been impactful. Everything has had at its core a really strong sense of value, and they're living their legacy in front of the next generations and involving us in it.
I love what you said about extending privilege, because so often now we hear that people who have privilege should give it up. And I think we should share. We should share privilege, and we should share the tools that you need to succeed. And that's the key, really.
Yeah, it's like they always say, you reach back and pull people up. You don't cut yourself down to be where they are. You just pull them up to where you are.
Kelly, talk a little bit, if you can, about the Hackett Center and the work during the pandemic.
The most important thing for the Hackett Center when my parents were establishing the gift was to address initially and very immediately the trauma and grief amongst children in the Gulf Coast region. They got to work as immediately as possible and did so not in a vacuum. And it's been very interesting to see since Harvey. Unfortunately, we all know COVID brought a lot of the same sort of symptoms, if you will, and problems to a much bigger portion of obviously the globe. But it was through a lot of the work that was done at the Hackett Center in the early years with Hurricane Harvey that we were able to pivot and respond appropriately in the Gulf Coast region, and that we already had the ear of the federal government on a lot of these issues. So to some extent, they were already briefed, if you will, on the major impact that events like these can have, especially on the youngest members of our population, and that it may be a while before they actually see that impact really manifest itself in its worst ways possible. So we're still learning, but what really impressed me about the Hackett Center is that they didn't let their nascent stages of growth get in their way when it came to making impact quickly and swiftly.
There's so many of the kids are stuck, and they've got so much pressure on them. They have to make up for the classwork that was missed. You just want everybody to just breathe and let the kids just be kids and talk to them about trauma and look for the signs. And so we've had the privilege of getting in school districts and helping teachers see what it is that appears to be trauma and in many cases grief, and how to deal with that. And don't consider yourself an expert, but let us help you become one. We can all be taught how to react to that and to take care of these little ones. And the little ones being so sick and so really taken by this COVID and this pandemic has really affected moms tremendously. That has also affected the dads and the teachers. So I think we got after it at the Hackett Center. And to Kelly's point, Hurricane Harvey, that was 1.6 million kids. Okay, now quadruple that. And that's what's happening with the pandemic.
Gosh, or more, yeah. Being able to recognize that it takes more than simply going into schools and creating programs to benefit children directly, that there are so many other indirect ways that families and children have to get the help that they need. So being in faith-based communities, making sure that you're speaking to parents, taking care of the teachers themselves, who are also trying to take care of others. All of those things are really important. And so I think a lot of great lessons were learned, but the staff of the Hackett Center is just so good at what they do. They knew all those things going in. It wasn't like we had to kind of find these out as we go. They already knew that in order to really target one issue, you have to look at the entire continuum and take care of everyone who's involved.
I think, you know, there's obviously been a lot of attention on mental health with the pandemic and some of the numbers that we're seeing coming out of the CDC of just how bad the situation is right now for mental health. So How do you think we can seize that opportunity? That people are talking about this. How can we take it to the next level?
I think we don't need to look at this being something across economic standards, socioeconomic status, the color of your skin, any of that. You know, mental health, we all have mental health and we all have the need for mental wellness. So let's just put that aside and let's all work together to make it better for somebody who doesn't have the wherewithal.
So Maureen, you just took on a role at MD Anderson.
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that and why you're passionate about what they do?
Yeah, for sure. Well, they're the best in the world. My mother, as I told you, was a cancer survivor. Several in my family have had cancer. It is, from a board member standpoint, strategically, it is one of the most fun meetings I ever go to. It's well organized, well thought out. I feel educated when I walk in. I feel even more educated when I walk out. And I chair the philanthropy committee, which is a lot. And we met the first 2 years of the new structure by Zoom only, which was somewhat remarkable from around the country. So top to bottom, these are the happiest employees, from the valet car parker to the person that takes your coffee cup to clean it, to the nurses, to the doctors, the surgeons, the researchers. It's remarkable to have people feel valued and add value. That's why it's a very easy peasy thing for me to do. I enjoy it.
So Kelly, you talked a little bit about the importance of your Catholic faith. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little about your philanthropy as it relates to your faith-based giving.
So as a family, we've always really supported Catholic education as well as the church. It's done amazing things for all generations of our family. I think it really helped us through some hard times, as well as was there to celebrate the good times. I've always given to the Catholic Church, and I've done so both financially and for the last 12 years or so. Every Sunday I bring communion to some people at a nursing home who aren't otherwise able to make it to church, because I know the experience of being surrounded by others and experiencing church every Sunday is super important. And to me, it's been something that's grounded us for years. It is kind of the common thread that makes all of our giving make sense. You know, our Catholic faith is where we have the foundation for all of our values in life, and it's a big part of where we get the perspective that it's really important to share with all those in the community.
Obviously, we've talked about very engaged in a lot of the organizations that you've supported. Why do you do that? Why is that so important to you?
For me, impact, to make sure that what my intention was is heading in that direction with the crew. So just like you would purchase stock, you know, I look at the management, I look at the leadership, I look at the board members. I look to see if everybody is in 100%, and I'm not necessarily talking about money. I'm talking about, do they show up? Do they add value? Do we get something done? Are there outcomes? Can we pinpoint the success? And I just love what I do.
Well, I just think it's so important to be authentic in anything that you're dedicating yourself to. So if you're willing to tell a board as a volunteer or a fiduciary, I'm there for you, then you need to be there for them 100%. Because that's also the only way that you're going to get others outside of the board or the organization to support that organization. Mm-hmm. Either you're in 100% or it's not worth someone else's time. So we only join those organizations we really truly believe in. And to make the greatest impact, like my mom said, that's possible, we have to give all of ourselves to it. And if we see an opportunity where something could be done better, it's our duty to the ultimate beneficiaries and to our community to voice that to those who can make changes.
Right.
So I've learned from my parents, you don't do anything less than 150% in life, or don't show up.
Well, you know, I think you're very clearly both so committed to what you're doing and passionate about what you're doing. And I want to talk a little bit about, Kelly, your involvement with the foundation and how much time and effort you've put into it. And I want to start with, you know, you went to Georgetown, you then got a law degree, you worked at a huge international law firm. You could have done really anything probably that you wanted to do. Why did you decide that this was the passion that you wanted to pursue?
Once I actually got into the world of big law and then stepped into finance, I realized that there was more that I could be doing on a social justice scale to help others. It felt very, not necessarily selfish, but as though I wasn't helping enough people outside of myself, and I felt I had a greater purpose. And I knew that for my parents' legacy, that I could be helpful when it came to their giving. I think sometimes they don't even realize how important they can be to other people. And so I saw an opportunity to jump in and help them recognize the impact that they could make and how important their legacy could be, not just to this family, but to others in this city and beyond. So I was lucky to be in a position where I could turn to them and say, I feel like I have enough of a background to luckily jump into the family office. And so that was the first thing I did from the very get-go of, we need to establish a logo, a mission statement. I want to know what your vision is. All of those things happened as soon as I joined the foundation team. And from there, built a bigger team with a chief philanthropic advisor and a foundation administrator to help us really understand that philanthropy is a business. I do a lot of speaking about next-gen philanthropy, and that's extremely important to me. I want to be able to educate next generation with all of the tools and lessons I've learned from my mom in particular, who's been very progressive when it comes to her ideas about philanthropy. It's just something that matters so much to me. So the foundation was really the stepping stone for me to really find who I am with respect to philanthropy and to realize that there's a way to really blend my background into something really fulfilling personally. So I can't imagine looking back ever doing anything else.
So you're talking about how seriously you both take your philanthropy and how much time and effort and passion you put into it. How do you feel about the critics of philanthropy, and particularly the ones who go after family foundations specifically? We have seen legislation on Capitol Hill that specifically targets family foundations, and I think we all know they play a really important role in local communities and nationally and sometimes internationally, but it doesn't seem like people really realize the amount of just thought and care and passion and effort and strategy that goes into the work you do. So what would you say to those critics? How do you respond to them?
Shame on them. And bless their hearts, I would say, give me an opportunity to understand what it is that you're saying, truly saying. That family foundations don't make an impact, that in your local, national, and international, I am part of a family foundation. I'm passionate about it. And what you're telling me is you're devaluing my passion. And you're telling me I don't matter. And you're telling me I'm cutting corners and doing things unethically, and I'm not. And you won't stop me from continuing what I'm doing. But what you will do is make a big stink of something that doesn't smell. It's really disappointing, disheartening, and I think it is, it's almost like dehumanizing, saying what you're doing really doesn't count, and you shouldn't get credit for it. I'm not looking for my name on a building or a big parade. I'm looking to do what I was put on this earth to do, and that is to help somebody somewhere have a better life for whatever reason. Education, scholarship, an art studio for kids with mental illness. So what you're doing now is you're telling me all of that is for naught.
Right. Why would you punish that?
Right.
Right.
Why would you punish somebody who's trying to do something good? And if you haven't done it, legislators, let me take you on a couple of trips with me. Let's just take a couple of tours, and if you don't feel like you need to give back, then you can feel that way, you can own that way. I will never feel that way. No, makes no difference to me. The amount of money, but the time and the effort and the science and the hard work that you put into this, and to devalue it is offensive, to be quite honest.
My perspective is a perspective of generational legacy. It's of the values that are really inherent to being a Hackett. That's what it is that I'm bringing to the table. My parents have given away so much of their wealth. It's astounding, but they've only done that because they've had the time to get to know the organizations they've given to, that they've been able to sit on the board of. And our strategic philanthropy depends on our ability to take that time, get to know places. And I truly think, especially through the institutions we've given to, we are making a difference in the world. I mean, to tell us that sitting on the board of MD Anderson Cancer Center and then ultimately giving to them strategically after a lot of diligence is not somehow going to make the world a better place is really hard to understand. So I would hope people would get back to understanding philanthropy is about love of humankind. And for anybody to stand in front of others and give them any excuse not to share resources with the world is really disappointing.
Well, and there have been calls to spend down your assets for decades.
Right.
And imagine where that would have left us with the
Imagine,
pandemic,
that's
with
right.
the crisis
Where would
in
the
Ukraine,
world be
with
in
so
50
many
years. Yeah.
Right. There will always be a next
always
crisis.
Something else.
Yes.
And how are we going to have the resources and the infrastructure as a sector to deal with that?
That's right.
If we spend it all now.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the greatest designs I've ever heard of is the donor advised funds, because it brings people together to talk about what can we do as a partner with this family and this family and this family to make it better in our community in this specific subject, or nationally or internationally. It's a beautiful model, better together.
So capitalism has a bad name today. Tell me about your feelings, your thoughts about capitalism and some of its critics.
Well, my husband's very vocal about capitalism and actually says that we should God would not want you to apologize for the wealth that you have accumulated unless you've just accumulated just to say you've done that. So I say capitalism is a great thing. Capitalism built this country. How did we get our railroads, our institutions, Princeton, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts? How did we get any of that? And that was a very different philanthropy at that time. Those were visionaries that wanted to see the world a better place, no question in my mind. We still have capitalists that have those visions and those dreams for this country and this world to be a better place. It's a lack of education. You just don't have the facts. You don't see the tremendous impact capitalism can have on the world, and not just on tchotchkes and cars and rockets and these types of things. No, education and research dollars and policy institutes and opportunities for government officials to do the right thing. That's what capitalism's all about.
Yeah, it's kind of nonsensical to think anything would ever get done without capitalism. I think it's interesting that it gets such a bad rap. It gets a bad rap when the government wants its money, but when any other institution wants it, that's who they run to first, you know? I mean, my dad worked in an industry that today perhaps doesn't necessarily have the best reputation, especially in this world of ESG and the desire to be a greener planet, which we all can appreciate, but without energy, where would we be? Where would all those gifts to major institutions, many of whom are supported by and support the government, where would those be without the gifts that we've made? So while I understand that it would be great if we could do something about wealth disparity, I don't think necessarily going after capitalists is the way to go. It seems short-sighted, and I think there are a lot of other things that we could do to fix a lot of the issues that we have with our fiscal system that don't necessarily have to simply target those who know how to make money by being visionaries.
Yep, this country was built on capitalism.
Yes, it was.
No doubt. And also the generosity of those capitalists.
For sure.
And a lot of hard work. I mean, the philanthropy that we do was not passed down from the generation ahead of me and ahead of Jim. Hard work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And as a result, a great deal of joy in the possibility and the ability to be philanthropic. Great joy.
What advice do you both have for philanthropists?
Start young. Be like a sponge. Learn everything that you possibly can. Started in little kids, and you can call it volunteering, but it's philanthropy. Whatever they're doing to help the world be a better place or help a child have something more than they couldn't have had. Education, and I think get involved. Get involved. The more people marching towards making this world a better place, the better place this world's going to be. And that's not going to end when I leave this earth. It's going to go on and on and on. So what a better thing to do than leave a legacy of doing the right thing.
Get involved. Give yourself a break. Don't feel like the only people that can be philanthropists are millionaires and billionaires. Everyone has something to bring to the table, and everyone's perspective. Everyone can bring value to philanthropy, and I think everyone needs to. I mean, the world requires it. We all depend on it. I mean, that it's going to be for welfare of humankind. But I think stay as informed as possible. Recognize that philanthropy is a business. There's a lot to it. It's more than just writing checks, and everyone can play a part.
Well, Maureen and Kelly, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And most importantly, thank you for everything you do to make the world around us better.
You're kind.
And for all the passion and thought that you put into your philanthropy. It's really an inspiration. I'm Elise Westhoff of the Philanthropy Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us for Doers to Donors. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with philanthropists Maureen and Kelly Hackett. For more episodes, please visit philanthropyroundtable.org and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.